Mark coming from WCS Montreal here as we're in the midst of group stage number 3, and we have a cool PvP to come up now. ShoWTimE is going to go up against Probe, as Probe, off the back of WCS Valencia, turned a lot of heads in the matchup, as he's going to be going up against somebody who is vying for a BlizzCon position and looking for a tournament victory here in Montreal. I'm joined to my left-hand side here by Nathanias and Rotterdam, and overall, what we've seen from both of these Protoss players through the entirety of the season is a Probe that has sort of overachieved in some of our initial estimations, and for ShoWTimE, a Protoss who underachieved in some of our estimations. Is that fair?
Yeah, the tournament season started off all right for ShoWTimE. I think Austin was a pretty good performance. I think made it at least to the quarterfinals back then. That's all right. You know, I think he lost against Neep, who ended up winning the tournament. It is what it is, you know, that can happen. But after that, obviously, it went downhill real fast. We had that third group stage exit in Jönköping, and then the second group stage exit in Valencia, which was really shocking. Obviously, Probe had that great run that we just went on about. But in the end, I don't think that matters that much right now. We're playing on different maps again. We're looking at a new ShoWTimE. ShoWTimE seems to be back where he belongs, winning Challenger, looking good. You know, it's not been the year that ShoWTimE obviously had in mind for himself, and we go over it all the time. If this player wants to make it, he has to win today. Obviously, there's only one player that can win this tournament, but for ShoWTimE, that story is actually somewhat realistic. Winning the entire tournament is not going to be easy, but I do believe that, you know, some of the people, when we bring it up, there's this almost 0.001% chance. With ShoWTimE, I feel like there's at least a 15 to 20, 25% chance that he wins the entire thing.
Yep, that's the begins like the realm of reality. It's like who actually we talk about. Okay, this person needs to win it from the beginning. This person needs to win.
I mean, Nate needs to win it to make it to BlizzCon.
That's right. If I won this tournament, I'd make it to BlizzCon. You know what I'm saying? It's like, who do we actually think is capable of doing that? And you look at a player like Scarlet, you're like, yeah, that's within the realm of possibility. Though that the results haven't been there. And ShoWTimE, well, he's gotten those results in previous years. He needs to make it happen now, but. This is the least comfortable position to have to do that. And all the pressure is on. You do not have any more opportunities to dig yourself out of this hole that you put yourself in all year long.
Yeah, well, of course, we can talk about it in just a few moments' time here as Mal is ready on the stage. Mal, it's not too cold here yet in Montreal, but are you ready for a cool PvP?
Oh my.
Yes, I am. It's actually not very cold. I remember this place being a lot colder like 12 years ago when I was here.
12 years ago.
Interesting. But Vancouver also too. See, the global warming is a real thing. Vancouver, we call it a Raincouver every now and then. In summer, it rains a lot, but this summer we haven't gotten a single drop of rain. It was great to ride, but you know, it's just an odd thing. Anyways, all right, next series is Protoss versus Protoss. It's time for our two next players to put everything they know about the race, everything they've practiced for, learned into this reality, this matchup. Will it be ShoWTimE or will it be Probe? ShoWTimE versus Probe, Probe versus ShoWTimE. Somebody lovely voice in my ear is telling me the production is ready and the two players are ready. World, I hope you are ready too. Ladies and gents, it's ShoWTimE and Probe.
All right, let's get this PvP underway. ShoWTimE going up against Probe here. And Probe, as I said, really turned heads at the last WCS Circuit event. But going up against ShoWTimE, it's very clear to a lot of people out there that for ShoWTimE, when he went through this challenger bracket in Europe, he looked like just a newly revitalized ShoWTimE off the back of, be it maps changing, Rotterdam, be it whatever.
He looked like the ShoWTimE that we saw a lot in 2016. The ShoWTimE that made it to the quarterfinals of the global finals, that beat beyond at the biggest stage as well. That's the ShoWTimE he looked like. And it's been a while since we saw him, but we never really doubted him, right? Like, obviously, we have to point out that if he bombs out early in the tournament, that is a shocking surprise. But we never said ShoWTimE doesn't have it anymore. ShoWTimE is probably, like, at this point, not even top 10 Europe. Nobody ever said that because we always knew that was inaccurate. And once again, I said it before, I really just think the previous map pool, there was something about it that just didn't suit him at all. He didn't have the results. And I feel the moment that this map pool got introduced, we started to see more and more of the ShoWTimE that we're so familiar with.
Yeah, if he were to get second place, he would gain 1,400 points, which would put him in the top 8, but it wouldn't solidify him a spot because the other guys are earning points up there. So he is technically looking for a tournament win to solidify himself.
He needs that win to move on, and that's That's the coolest part of all of this, with all those players that we've talked about that have done well but haven't quite gotten in that striking distance of the championship. They've got some points, but not really quite enough to secure themselves. And Probe, as we talked about, another good player, but he is not the player that you come into. You're like, okay, yeah, well, obviously if he wins this season too, he's the guy that we're like, okay, ShoWTimE. This is not necessarily like a matchup where we see him as being an underdog.
Yes.
Like, you have to win this, like, if you want to move forward. He's not going to be an easy opponent for you to defeat, and there's a big opportunity here for Probe to upset him with the results that he's had this year.
I do think it's worth to mention, which I think is always worth to mention, is that Group H is not the most stacked group of the round of 32. It's never easy. I mean, Jig is in there, the Canadian Zerg player, who's very tough, but ShoWTimE would be a big favorite against him. And we also have Sol, who is kind of a dangerous European Terran, but we saw him early today go down against Mana. So in the bizarre scenario that ShoWTimE would lose here, which I would still think is a little bit bizarre, even though Probe is good, I don't think that would be the end for ShoWTimE, because there is still a good chance he bounces back in that deciders match. But you don't want to go there, and you also want to give yourself a better bracket, obviously.
Of course. We highlight ShoWTimE's WCS points, which is 1,240 right now, but Probe's not that far behind, actually, with 1,170. So technically is in a similar position. But we don't expect as much from Probe.
I mean, you already said that ShoWTimE to like lock it down would still need like that second place, even if he wasn't going to win it. So if Probe's behind him, it's like, he's got to win it all, guys. Just,
like everybody else.
Got to win. Unless your name's Neeb, you pretty much need to win this tournament.
Yeah, it's a scary spot for a lot of these guys if their aspirations are there. For ShoWTimE, that's definitely true. He was there last year, as you mentioned, did have some of those upsets against Beyond. And looking at this PvP, we saw Probe do valiantly well against Neeb in the previous WCS Circuit event. Can he do it here against ShoWTimE, who has gone up against the likes of Neeb and conquered the likes of Neeb in the past?
He's shown us that he has that potential. But the big question is now, with this much on the line, you know, you're going up against a ShoWTimE who is going to be thinking about that every step of the way. He's like, I need to win this tournament. I have to win this tournament. This is the most important thing. He'll probably put his best practice he's probably done in a very long time in specifically this event, because he knows there's no other opportunities.
Yeah.
I think if you're Probe, obviously you're going to train as hard as you can. You want to win this, but it's going to be a very difficult match.
You give it a Hail Mary, try and see what you can find.
Well,
just 5 out, no running back, just all the way.
Yeah.
2 or 3 of those, perhaps. This is going to be very tough, man. ShoWTimE is in perfect shape. We saw some of the screenshots as well on Reddit. I think there was at one point where he was like rank 1 to 5. I mean, several drops. It's like rank 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the European ladder was all ShoWTimE. I mean, then you're really making a statement like, guys, you know, can anybody beat me right now, or is this it? You know,
this is my house.
Yeah. So ShoWTimE is going to be in great shape. I think this obviously is a chance for Probe once again to show that his series against Neeb wasn't a fluke, but I think ShoWTimE is just going to be a little bit too solid across the board. Just rushing up to Disruptors, old school tech, I really don't think is going to catch ShoWTimE off guard. ShoWTimE is an absolute genius when it comes to hitting these small, subtle timings and making sure he gets that economic advantage. I mean, trying to go up to 3 bases, but also rushing up to Disruptors, he will punish you. There's always a prism with a couple of adepts shading around. Few probes here, few probes there, and before you know it, you're 20-30 supply down.
All right, well, thank you very much, gents. We are ready to go over to the commentary team now here for ShoWTimE versus Probe. So let's head over to In Control and Todd, who will bring you all the action.
Thank you, Kalaris and the boys, and hello, Montreal. We have a very nice PvP coming up here. I love the way they broke it down. A lot of storylines, as always, at a WCS event. Here we have ShoWTimE, one of the most red-hot, best European players, who's had a bit of a trippy season so far, but is suddenly kind of catching heat, going up against Probe, perhaps most famously known for being the twin brother to Snoot from Australia.
And also for being pretty good at StarCraft.
He's also pretty good at StarCraft, I suppose. Should be a good match. Well, let's get into it right now, ladies and gentlemen. The lower right-hand side of Abyssal Reef, wearing the blue trunks from Australia, it's Probe. Good day, mate. He wears the blue pretty well. And in the top left, coming from Germany, one of our best non-Koreans and starting to play like it, in the red, it is ShoWTimE. What do you think, Todd? We did see and we heard them talk about it. Probe is a good Protoss player. He was able to give Neeb a scare taking him down to the wire in that best of 5. But now he's facing ShoWTimE, who seems really hungry for this tournament.
Absolutely. Like ShoWTimE, he has a tremendous amount of pressure on his shoulders. Like he was a top 8 finisher at last year's global finals at BlizzCon. This year, for him to be in this position where he has to make the grand finals or even win the whole thing, it's, I mean, as good as he is, it must be a lot of pressure on his shoulders. So hopefully he can handle it. Hopefully he can go really deep in the tournament, but it's gonna have to start here in this winner's match up against a very competitive player like Probe, who even though he took second in the challenger of his region, like we said, he had a very competitive series against Neeb. And I mean, if you can go toe-to-toe up against Neeb in a PvP, you can have a good match against anybody in the matchup.
I think that means you're pretty proficient in that matchup. I mean, you kind of touched on this, Todd, and I want to hear from your thoughts because you have seen ShoWTimE, you've been covering the WCS Challenger events in that European scene. What does the pressure do to ShoWTimE? Is he one of those players where you think that this is something that might rattle him? Or because for some players, the more the pressure, the better they play almost. Where does ShoWTimE land in that?
I don't think it affects him as much as I feel like sometimes maybe he gets a little bit worn out with the amount of practice that he goes through and certain matchups.
Okay.
And as good as he is at finding keys and ways to play properly in most of the matchups, sometimes he will hit a roadblock that he will take longer to overcome than in some of the matchups. So that's been the case kind of like against Zerg for some time.
Okay.
And I feel like sometimes having a hard time in one matchup will affect you in all of them. Because you're always thinking about it, you know? It's like that one ladder that you lose, but you can't get over. You keep on laddering, and like you lose every next game because you're still thinking about that one that you lost before.
Can clout your mind there. We do see a bit of a difference in the execution of the otherwise fairly common PvP openings. It's going to be the Stalkers of Probe versus the first 2 of these fellers here, and 2 Stalkers behind it from ShoWTimE. What do you think of this opening, Tom?
ShoWTimE, usually when you go for depths like this, you're gonna want to play aggressive.
Okay.
Maybe he's hoping to surprise Probe a little bit. This achieves a scout a lot of the time as well. The first shade is usually the one that's cancelled, and you confirm the Nexus timing with, but in this case, he actually confirms with these adepts here on that location, so he might choose to shade in, but against well-placed pylons, it's not worth it.
And that first pylon does clean up the first adept immediately, and then 4 Stalkers and the motion pour kill the next one. So you would say that this is a nice opening for Probe so far?
Yeah, for sure. Like the one thing that this achieves for ShoWTimE is that he saw that there was no Stargate, no Twilight, nothing like that. So that in itself, like scouting, is almost priceless in this matchup.
Right.
I'm sure he threw away 2 adepts, didn't really kill anything with them, but he knows that tech-wise he's gonna be all right. That if he wanted to, like ShoWTimE could have skipped that Robo for a long time, but he's gonna play it very safe anyway, just going for the early Twilight. And usually in PvP, you see Blink as the main opener, but we've seen crazy things like, you know, Charge being made early at times, but out of ShoWTimE, I expect Blink more often than not than something like Waves of Charge.
And he's going to return to these adepts as scouting, which is interesting too. As you said, he sees no tech, which is kind of interesting because like you just got to describing as well, it can either be Blink first or Robo. Very rarely would someone add a Stargate. That would be kind of a missed timing and kind of bad there, but it's going to show up. There's a sufficient force to really clean this up pretty quickly. And if he lets that finish, which he does, immediately gets 1 sentry. Does he get the second? What? He does. Now, what this happens here too, now of course they're worth 100 gas, so that in and of itself is good, but the woes of scouting for Probe continue because there's that shade here from ShoWTimE, so he's going to be able to see, well not shade, hallucination. I'm getting too fancy with my words. But on the flip side for Probe, it's just that observer, which he wants to keep at home too, because if it's DTs, he can be in a lot of trouble.
But I guess because he went for a very quick Robo Bay, he's probably going to want to go for Gravitic Drive a lot of the time, in which case you're being aggressive and getting scouting done.
Yeah, you're right.
Through it. The thing is, though, it was spotted as soon as it started there. So now ShoWTimE, he has an opportunity to choose how he reacts to it. The fact that he was already going for Blink, and I mean, it's almost completed here at this point, is very, very scary to think about, because if he has Stalkers in the right location, catches that Prism, it's going to be a disaster for Probe. He even goes for his Stargate, actually, behind this, to make sure he can catch the Prism out on the map over some of the dead space that there could be around his base.
He'll make a single Phoenix, most likely, and that single Phoenix will just basically say, all the investment you made into that Speed Warp Prism is going to be for naught. I also like the choice to take the fast third. If he sees like a lot of gateways in Probe space, that would be a more questionable choice, but instead he says, nope, you're going to do some harass opening. I see it at its conception, basically. I'm going to take the faster third. Now, it's only slightly faster. Probe does expand behind that as well.
Yeah, I like that ShoWTimE went for a pylon on the bottom left as well, trying to spot something, you know, maybe flying by a little bit in advance. The Stalker count is not very, very high here. ShoWTimE gonna react a little bit late to this. He's gonna lose 6 probes.
Yeah, and that's a bit weird because he saw this coming, but still was caught off guard there. I mean, he knew he was going to be a Speed Warp Prism and Disruptor, but to not have your Stalkers in the middle line is a little bit questionable. That being said, though, like the DPS of those Stalkers is not such that it probably would have shut it down.
And he's still not ready. I guess he's waiting for the Phoenix to make sure that he catches this and he doesn't return home. And now the Phoenix is going to get to work on that Prism if he can find it. And the Stalkers are meant to be chasing out on the map so that they can catch the Prism. He didn't reveal Blink yet either.
Yeah, good call there. Blink has not finished just yet for Probe.
I don't know about bringing the sentries, though. These could get blown up from a Disruptor shot.
Thank goodness this Warp Prism's got Nos. Still gonna get caught here, though. Oh, but look, it's on the other side of the rock, so the Disruptor is safe. I mean, losing the Warp Prism sucks, but if you lose the Disruptor, that's really bad.
And now Probe is in a situation where he's going for Blink himself. He's already on 3 Disruptors with the 4th one on the way. He's getting 5 more gates. Probe, like he had a great series against Neve, but I feel like already here in game 1 is putting up a hell of a fight up against ShoWTimE. And he's mixing in always a lot of different builds as well. That's what I really like about his PvP. He never does the same thing twice.
And it's going to be sustained Phoenix coming out from ShoWTimE. So when you're facing Disruptors, this is one of the responses where if you can pick up those Disruptors even after they shoot their shot, they'll get canceled. They'll basically become nothing. And the really bad thing, the super punishing part of that too, is the cooldown does not reset. It's just, yep, that shot went off and you're going to have to wait now. So ShoWTimE's aware of the tech composition he's facing and he's going to go into this. But this timing from Probe could be really strong because you need a lot of Phoenix to do that.
Yeah, he's got more army right now, and this is going to be a scary timing, but at the same time, when you're facing Phoenixes, the best thing you can do is get closer to maxing out your opponents.
Yeah, the bigger the army, the less they work,
Yeah, then Phoenixes start becoming really bad, but at this stage, if I look at Probe's army, it's still incredibly scary because there is the synergy between Force Fields and Purification Nova. Look, that's 3 sentries that he remade right there, and they're gonna have a bit of energy here to work with, and there's nothing to break it just yet out of ShoWTimE.
It's a little bit of pressure here on ShoWTimE.
Actually, no, there is an Archon, but it's just a single one.
I mean, to your point, though, the rest of that army is like 1 Purification Nova or 2 away from just being dead. We're going to have that fight here. Steps forward. The Phoenix come in. They do get the pickup. There's nothing to stop it. The DPS is just not that great for the Stalkers. And he has to fall back. The Disruptors are almost abandoned. The Stalkers kiting backwards, but their DPS is just not very good. ShoWTimE jumps all over that. Picking off the Observer, but there's no Dark Shrine behind this, so that's okay. And the other important thing here, too, is the Phoenix count remains high. So all of a sudden, Probe's rebuilding more Disruptors, but good luck with that. They're going to be facing a higher Phoenix count.
That was the sickest save, actually. Like the Purification Nova almost landed right there. I think that whole army of ShoWTimE probably saw its life flash right before their eyes. But ShoWTimE's on the counter attack. He feels confident. He's got Phoenixes to work with against the Disruptors of Probe that are not even there just yet. 2 are about to come out. Those chargers are going to make sure the 4th base doesn't go up, which is going to mean ShoWTimE's going to be on 4 bases against 3.
These would have to be the luckiest Disruptors ever. There's just so many Phoenix here. They will absolutely pick it up, going after even the Stalkers. And we're going to have that first Disruptor, but it just immediately gets picked up and is canceled out. I don't see this game going too much longer. Even though the supplies are fairly close, it's just that composition and timing of ShoWTimE that's doing so much damage here.
Yeah, Probe, I think he needed not to attack, maybe to transition into his own charge. Even if he holds here, like this is just bad. He's lost most of his army. ShoWTimE's on 4 bases in the meantime.
Yeah, and it's going to get called right there. Probe says, I've had enough. ShoWTimE takes the 1-0. There's half both their faces combining for almost a face, and now we can see the reality settling in there for Probe. He's come all the way from Australia. He's been here before. We've seen him at Valencia. I think he was at Young Shaping. He's been doing well in that Australian scene, which has some great players, but he keeps facing some of these juggernauts. I mean, we saw him narrowly lose to Neve, and now he's facing ShoWTimE, who's in a must-win situation. Not necessarily this best of 3, and I know we've been hammering you guys with this out there a lot, but it's worth noting. I mean, Todd was talking about this earlier. ShoWTimE made a deep run at BlizzCon, and I don't have the number in front of me, but it's like a deep run at BlizzCon can be $100,000. It can be $80,000. You can buy so many cheeseburgers with that.
Or bratwurst.
Or other things. For me, it's cheeseburgers. For him, it's something else.
Bratwurst. Sausage.
Yeah, bratwurst. Schnitzels, I think. But you know what? That's down the road. Probe right here. I liked his ideas, by the way. It's not like we look at this and say, oh, Disruptor, you can't do that. That's impossible. But I do like what you were talking about, Todd, where it's the bigger army that is better about that. I think that through Need for a Loop, we saw a couple of those games go max. And all of a sudden, if your Phoenix show up, but there's like 45 Stalkers and Templar feeding back and stuff like that, then all of a sudden, you're not picking up all those Disruptors and you take that massive damage.
I think by attacking like this, Pro basically said, I hope he messes up, doesn't pick up, because if a single one of those Purification Nova lands, you said it, that army of ShoWTimE gets blown up. Like, if say like something like 6 or 7 Zealots get blown up in one shot, suddenly it becomes a different fight. The reinforcements of Pro would then be enough for him to just win the fight right out and win the game. But in this case, ShoWTimE had the clean defense, takes map number 1, and we're going to be going to map number 2 here in a second.
Well, that first game might even be a bit more off-putting than what we give it credit for, too, because throughout that whole best of 5 against Neeb that we keep referring back to, Probe went Disruptor every single time. That kind of seems to be his thing. A lot of Protosses have moved away from that, but it threw Neeb for a loop, whereas ShoWTimE, and ShoWTimE's famous for this, too, by the way. When you ask other players about his PvZ, his PvT, they always say the same thing. He defends so well that the only way to beat him is you have to basically outplay him. Counting on a mistake or trying to catch him off guard doesn't really work. So I'm a bit concerned for Pro, because if he just goes back to Disruptors, I feel like we could see a repeat of game number 1.
Yeah, what would be interesting, I think, is if Probe didn't attack in that situation. Yeah. Maybe made a transition to charge loads, his own item plus to feed back the Phoenixes, but then obviously, like, you know, there's a lot of like bro science and theory crafting, and like in this case, ShoWTimE could be the one adding his own Disruptors or even Colossus in, or maybe even some sort of air transition. I can switch, you know,
but a better chance, to your point. I do think that you're right. And the thing is, too, it's easier to defend against Phoenixes coming in, grabbing your Disruptors, than to be on the offense with them, I find, because if you can get out a little bit, pick off a Phoenix or 2 and kite backwards with Blink, and then you can thin the numbers, all of a sudden they're not picking up all 6 or 7 of your Disruptors, and that can be like the better game plan. But I think we're having a momentary pause here as we're just heading into this next game. If you're just now joining us, welcome. A lot of great matches have been played. You can follow kind of the results here with their analyst desk, but also Team Liquid's a great website for that. And we do have another best of 3 to finish off the day after this. So we have still some more StarCraft coming, and then we're going to be here all weekend long. We're going to crown a champion, and this champion's a big one. You've heard the storyline the entire time we've been talking about it. It's been very, very important that the winner of this gets their butt to BlizzCon, because this is the final stop. There's nowhere else to go.
Any prediction, Jeff?
For the match or the whole thing?
The whole thing.
I want ShoWTimE to win the whole thing. I think that'd be amazing. I think he's one of the best soldiers we got, and I want BlizzCon to be competitive. Those Koreans are so darn good. There's a chance that we send a bunch of non-Koreans there, and they're just lambs to the slaughter. So if we can get our better players there, we're going to have a closer and more awesome BlizzCon as far as I'm concerned.
Sounds pretty good to me. All right. We're on Ascension to Ire here for map number 2 in this best of 3. Starting in the top left-hand side of the map, playing as the Blue Protoss, it is Australia's Probe.
And he's come a long way to do battle with this man here from Germany in the red. It is ShoWTimE.
Our most recent WCS Europe Challenger champion had a great performance, whereas Probe took second in his region, only losing to Seether in the grand finals.
Which is interesting. This is, you know, Seether is that Australian scene that they'll send out kind of like alternating guys. It used to be like a lot of Iagaz. It's been Probe lately, but now
guys
Seether.
Like Big before as well.
Big,
it always changes, it seems like.
They've got, you know, I think there's some weird gentlemanly agreement in Australia where it's like, we will have 2 good players, never 3, never 1, but 2. But this is just the common wall in. So one of the questions I want to ask you, Todd, is what do you think about this? Is kind of I know this is a stylistic point, but maybe for the benefit of our viewers, why wall in base versus ramp? What are your thoughts? I mean, do you care either way?
I think everybody's doing in-base nowadays because it's safer to have your pylons, because mostly of overcharge, right? If you do the one at the ramp, it doesn't necessarily achieve that much. Then like you will only do that if you want a perfect wall and keep the probe outside of your opponent's base. Like if Adepts shading, we saw what happened last game, right? Like you just overcharge and then they die. So essentially, even if the opponent gets a scout, it's not necessarily that worth. So I think it saves you minerals as well. Like you don't have to send the probe all the way at the ramp and then come back every time it makes a building. I think that's why it's become like a lot more standardized.
Okay, and there are those pylons there shown by our wonderful observer. Got a great tandem here. Mapu, Funka. I like that we have a French observer in Montreal as well. He's just from France to France, basically. Kind of.
Feeling right at home.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right, well, we got a probe acting a little bit suspicious. This would be called StarCraft loitering. It would be illegal if he was outside of a market store or something like that, but here we welcome it. And he's actually gonna back away, and both the loitering probes might jump up and kiss at 12 o'clock.
I believe crouching probe, hidden pylon is
I like that.
referring for.
I like that. And it can be too, like if it builds a Stargate or something like that. Look at this, this is gonna be so funny. They're like, hey, we both had the same idea. No, not doing anything. A couple of stalkers gonna probe forward back and check each other out. If you look at that production tab, you can see they're doing very similar things. 4 stalkers, kind of a standard opening.
Yeah.
A little bit of investment. It will delay your tech, and we can see that as the exchange here from ShoWTimE. He's only got, no, he's got the 4 stalkers as well, never mind.
This is very risky, right, by the way. If probe reacts quickly and chases, just does moving shots every time, he's gonna be able to get at least 1 stalker.
Oh, probe, and there it is. And he's,
okay, he doesn't react quickly.
Well, might get the 1.
Yeah, he
does. Not bad. And that pylon from ShoWTimE, of course, there's not going to be a gateway to follow it up because the probe is heading back, but that is a slow warp-in pylon, which is fine. Yeah. And I'm getting a little bit curious because it's up to, it would have been 5 or 6 stalkers.
Yeah. So you get adepts, you shade them inside of the main base, you send the stalkers to the natural, and then the Oracle flies in there and kills.
Yeah.
It sounds hard, but it's just basic Protoss attacks, 101.
A lot going on here, and ShoWTimE's going to do that. He shows up, there's that Oracle as Todd predicted. The faster blink for probe, but the defense of what's coming is going to be the big deal here. I like the Mothership Core at home over there. So he's got a couple of sentries in the natural too.
Yeah, this initial attack is supposed to force the overcharge here so that the Oracle later can do the real damage. Forces a first overcharge there.
And he doesn't get either of the freaking adepts so far. And they shade forward.
The fact that the 2 sentries died, that negates any scouting as well.
Yes, again.
Oh, the second overcharge. You shouldn't have used focus stats.
I mean, I get it though. I agree with you. He shouldn't have, but he's worried if even a single adept can just do some damage there. It was deep red hell, so at the end of the day, that does probably go down as a mistake. But this Oracle shows up to a world where there's not sentries, so it's not being spotted. The Mothership Core, it has just enough energy for 1 photon overcharge. Now look at the pylons. No one of those pylons covers the whole mineral line.
Yeah, I think ShoWTimE is just gonna fly in there and start killing probes. Whichever pylon is triggered is gonna move outside of the range of it and then kill more probes.
And there it is, and it just gets a couple of shots off. He's gonna back away, so that's nice. Another probe does die, and the stalkers show up to shoo away this Oracle. So not game-ending damage, but not bad from ShoWTimE as well. He gets a couple of probes and puts probe on alert. Now, probe does have blink about to finish, so the amount of time this Oracle can kind of hang out and do some stuff is going to be very limited. Or non-existent. It's going to have to get out of here. Go home, Oracle. You're not intoxicated.
I like that ShoWTimE is going for the Forge as well. Both players are going to start working on their upgrades, and as well as the 3rd base, which I expect ShoWTimE to start his here very soon. It's been a little bit delayed. So he's working on a walker count here.
A little bit later. Shows up in the main. Now, there is blink here. I think that's a dead Oracle. Yeah. Oh, come on. 1 health? Which one of you stalkers?
Do you think
it's going to happen. Finish it. Thank you. Just the 1 shot, too. And look at the cheeky grin from ShoWTimE. Oh, my God, ShoWTimE. He's such an adorable, like, Sith Lord. He's just like, you would kill that. But here's that scouting from ShoWTimE. And the Oracle is supposed to achieve that as well. But he's going to see the 3rd base. He's going to see he's slightly behind on that. How big of a deal is that, Todd? I mean, the 3rd finishes, it's getting saturated. What do you think?
I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world here. ShoWTimE can just work on his own walker count, take his 3rd base a little bit later, and also... It's so funny because Probe's nickname is Probe as well. Whereas at this point, it should almost be like Dead Probes.
Yeah.
With all those that he's low.
Could end up in that direction. He's going to go ahead and see the 3rd base timing of ShoWTimE. But this Oracle, stop it. Holy cow. I mean, I talked about its damage not being game-ending, but we're getting to the point now where it's racking up the kills and really dropping the econ here. of Probe.
ShoWTimE has killed 18 probes so far in this game and lost 0, so now he's got a huge walker count.
Well, look at the difference, actually. It's only a couple there. That third base.
Oh, I'm looking at the supply.
You're looking at the supply. Supply there's a big deal. Yes, ShoWTimE's way up there, but... Oh, no, never mind. I was looking at the Army supply. Okay, listen. It's been a long day of casting one other match. That's my excuse,
It's my
I
first
guess.
guess.
Yeah. We come in rusty and tired. No, I mean, you're right. It was actually, it's a big worker difference there. I was looking at the Army supply for some reason. Gateway explosion coming in from ShoWTimE, and that's one of the things that kind of marks a tournament-winning caliber player, is they say, look, I did a lot of damage to you. You're going to spend this time chrono boosting out workers, and you're going to not have as much of an emphasis on Army, and I can just put this game down.
And from there, you can always expect ShoWTimE to be super solid as well. One thing that I really like about, new age pro gamers and PvP in particular is that whenever somebody has a lead, they don't do the same thing we used to do back in the day, where you sit back and then you try to expand that lead more with more bases, more turtling, maybe a prism here and there harassing. No, they just attack. Yeah. They got 2 or 3 more Archons, 2 or 3 more Disruptors. They're like, all right, it's time for me to kill you because I've got way more. Overcharge is nice, but it's not that nice when the armies start being over 60 army supply, 70 army supply. So I fully expect ShoWTimE to eventually go for some sort of attack here and do really well with that. It's going to be hard for Probe to defend if ShoWTimE were to attack. Look, 4 more gates going down.
It kind of reminds me of one of our great legends of old, MC. I mean, one of the things MC was so good about doing as a Protoss player was gaining a small advantage one way or another. Maybe it's a cheesy opening, maybe it's some kind of harass, and then just throwing down 10, 12 gateways and ending the game after that. Whereas a lot of players, like you said, for some, the meta is kind of like, oh no, I'm ahead. Well, that's great. Now I can take a second expansion or 3rd or 4th and get my win there. But it's just more of the killer instinct with these aggressive players. ShoWTimE's going to push out here. And ShoWTimE, by the way, is one of the less aggressive players. He is a player that's more likely to be like, well, I'm ahead, so I'll just like tech up and expand again and just smother you. But he's actually so far ahead, he's going to decide to push out here. And that's going to open up the opportunity for Probe to jump on top of the space. But those are charge slots. He's actually already trapped here.
ShoWTimE actually skipped on the gas station on that 3rd base, so it's going to be super mineral heavy, and that's why he went for so many gateways, to just focus on many, many Zealots to try and overwhelm Probe completely. Stacy's squad is going to be set up here on the 4th base, which I'm pretty sure is going to be a cancel, but then ShoWTimE will most likely still attack into that 3rd base. No cancel!
No cancel. He's going to try to defend it. He shows up. It's actually a very sizable force from Probe, and has those Stalkers out there. But here's that double Immortal Warp Prism drop that is also very popular in the meta. And look at the damage. One of the pylons goes down to 2 gateways unpowered. Targeting the next one, there's a Warp and trying to get it in time. It looks like it will mostly finish, but still that pylon does die. And now some miscontrol from ShoWTimE here, but the damage is being done. Even if he cleans this up pretty cleanly right now, a lot of his production's being slowed down. He's lost probes. It's looking bad, Todd.
Yeah, Probe has to send his main army maybe to try and defend against this, but then he will be attacked by the rest of the army of ShoWTimE at the bottom. Man, these in-control pylons really did him no favors here in the main.
They hurt him there for sure. And he actually still, I mean, I talked about this if he cleans this up cleanly. He didn't, Todd. There's still units running around in his forces. And as you said, he knows there's an army outside of his 4th base. And the second he gets out of there, he's going to be bad news bears, basically. He's going to pick off this Warp Prism. Look at that red blob in the southern part of the map. Sure, you killed that, but can you kill this? This base is not even saturated. It's in such a danger zone. He's going to show up. I don't know, Todd. This is not looking good for Probe.
Yeah, there's just too much here from ShoWTimE. Probe down to his last few forces. Yeah, these High Templars were not even made into Archons yet. GG. And ShoWTimE takes the 2-0 win here.
Clean, concise, and strong. Looking good. ShoWTimE has been playing red hot, tearing up that European scene, and he has not slowed down. Probe's a fantastic PvP player, but you wouldn't know it after that series. It was all ShoWTimE all day long. Keep your eye on these guys. That was not the elimination match, so Probe's got more to show us, but ShoWTimE looking good, Todd. And with that, I want to hear from him and our ever gregarious, just awesome host and interviewer, Mal, on that stage with the backwards cap and the flashy shoes.
That's right. Thanks, Jeff. ShoWTimE, congratulations on your victory. From what I know, you are able to go toe-to-toe in PvP against the 2-time 2017 WCS Circuit winner, Neeb, and so was he. I was actually expecting a lot more closer game than and a breeze through like this.
I think when Neeb played against Probe, he didn't have really much practice against Disruptor because in Korea nobody plays Disruptor. But I knew Pro was going to go Disruptor in like as one game, and like I know what to do it against it, and that's why I wasn't too close.
Yeah, no, you definitely look like you know what you were doing. There's a real buzz around you amongst all the casters and some of the players that you might actually be a dark horse in this tournament.
I mean, I'm a champion, so I'm always a contender, I think. I didn't perform in the last 2 events, and which was unfortunate, I guess.
Let him have it.
I guess, yeah. I mean, it was pretty sad. I think I'm in good shape right now, and I can go far, but I just want to play my game and not be too scared or too focused on the outcome.
Yeah, that should be the mentality. Now, to be able to qualify for the WCS, the global finals in November, you need to place at least, I think, at the second, like runner-up in this tournament. Does that motivate you to perform any better, or does that actually did I just psych you out?
I'm not thinking about BlizzCon at all. Like,
because it's already in the bag, right?
Yeah, like I think if you go into like a tournament and you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna win it, right? That's puts like too much pressure on me.
That's the champion's mentality.
So just like one game after another and don't think about it.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much for the interview. Congratulations in your advancement and best of luck.
ShoWTimE 2-0, clean victory there for the most part against Probe, and looking to advance on. He makes the round of 16 now, and he will try and move forwards all the way. But he said there, you know, he's a champion, so he should always be in contention, but he's not thinking about BlizzCon just yet. Taking it one step at a time, Nathanius.
I think as good of a player as ShoWTimE is, as much as we know, love, and respect the guy, he is also a realist. He accepts that as good as his match looked, this was not the player that he would be going up against if he makes it somewhere deep enough into the grand finals, which is where he needs to be if he wants to get to BlizzCon. He's given a realistic approach to this. We need to see how he fares up when he goes against one of these other contenders that also need to win, and we expect to be able to win.
Yeah, but I think anybody that wants to take out ShoWTimE this weekend is going to have to play some of the best StarCraft they've ever done, because ShoWTimE looks really solid. So right now, if you're not in peak condition, I really think you're going to have an incredibly tough time against ShoWTimE. And even when you're in top shape, I think there are very few players in this field right now that could take him out in a best of 5 or perhaps even a best of 7. I think this PvP series kind of played out the way I expected. You know, game number 1 tried Disruptor, Probe that is, and ShoWTimE is just a little too good. He's not going to be surprised by it. Game number 2, it's a little more like, okay, I'll try to play your game, but then obviously that's where ShoWTimE has a little bit more experience and is just slightly sharper when it comes to the timings. Pretty straightforward victory, and look forward to seeing more of ShoWTimE tomorrow because he's looking good.
Yeah, he definitely is. And that was some good PvP from him. During his WCS Europe Challenger run, it was all PvZ the whole way. And that seems to be a big focal point here in the circuits, where it is the big Zerg players you're probably going to have to beat if you want to get a very, very high placement. So has he got good potential here, especially with some of the better Terrans like Special actually being knocked out on the other side of matchups?
Yeah, it's hard to doubt him. I think a lot of this tournament's going to end up just looking at also some of the results here. It's like, who are you really going to have to worry about on the Terran side of things? Like, I feel like a lot of players would have said what Zanster said, which is like, yeah, Special's the guy that you're worried about. And it's like, well, okay, he's out of the picture, so it's basically just mowing down Zergs and hoping that you don't get put against Neeb early on in the bracket.
And can he mow down those Zergs, Rotterdam?
I mean, he did it in Challenges, so there's no reason to assume he can't do it again.
Yeah.
We've got some updates as well of group stage 3, round of 32, that is. Neeb is already advanced as well, as he took care of business in group number A. And, you know, I really didn't want to mention it too much because I feel like the last few times I tried to hype it up, it feels like I almost jinxed my boys. But early today, InControl said, even though Utermo lost that first series, he could come back and play Jon Snow again. He did beat Jon Snow again eventually, even though Jon Snow was even up 1-0 over Hearthstone. But Hearthstone won the group, Utermo got second. They're both in the round of 32, and both my Dutch boys won their first series. But that's all I'm going to say about it, James, because I feel like I've been jinxing them lately. So
Dutch magic.
Yeah, I'm just going to, let's just see how it plays out. But so far, a couple of good results coming in from the round of 32, as you guys just saw.
Well, I'm just being notified as well that we're going to go to a break, but when we're back, we're going to have Haas going up against TLO, and then what I believe is a decider match in that group? Or?
Oh, that would mean that Haas, yes, you're spot on. Haas has actually defeated Zanster.
Yes.
While TLO lost in his EVZ series against True. So yes, that is a deciders match.
All right. Well, thank you very much, gents. It's time to go to a short break now. But when we return, the mother of oracles, the breaker of Kyalaris himself, is going to go up against the creative one in TLO here at WCS Montreal.